It must be a really difficult subject for both of you because nothing that we've covered on the podcast is something that we've never spoken about before. But this, I feel, I've never had a conversation at depth about this topic really with either of you.
Hello and welcome to Seriously with Sarah Beanie. This week's podcast is a little bit different. We're going to dedicate the whole episode to talking about something that affects a lot of people and has affected our family personally. So that is dementia. Hello and welcome to Seriously with me, Sarah Beanie.
And today our special guest.
Drum roll, please, drum roll. Who could it be? Who could it be? Who could it be?
It could be someone really exciting, couldn't it?
No, it's not.
It is someone really exciting.
So we allowed Graham, which is my husband, out of the cupboard where he's been locked. He's in today's podcast.
I've put up with 30 years of those comments. You should be excited that I'm here.
I am so excited you're here. This is so... Aren't you boys as well?
We are,
Yeah.
we are.
I mean,
See them all jumping up and down with excitement.
there's a lot of excitement today because we have got an incredibly important special guest. It's going to be hard to control everyone today, I think.
Yeah.
So Billy's a little bit overtired today because his flight, which was from Glasgow down to Bristol, was cancelled. So he's a bit whingy, to be honest.
I'm not.
You are. He complained.
Can I tell you what's
rang
even
him
better
early
is
this
that
morning.
I flew up in a storm, in an actual storm.
Were you scared?
Just to clarify, it was a red weather warning.
And you were so
braved
brave
it.
because
Is
you
that-
flew
Is
through
that
it.
the most dangerous weather warning?
Yeah.
You can't get, doesn't get much higher than a red weather warning.
Anyway, this week we're going to talk about dementia for the whole episode.
Yes.
A lot of people will already be aware, but I think we should probably start by quickly defining what dementia is. So dementia is an umbrella term for a group of related symptoms associated with an ongoing decline of brain function. There are many different causes of dementia and many different types. Alzheimer's disease is a type of dementia, and together with vascular dementia, makes up the majority of cases. Dementia symptoms may include problems with memory loss, thinking speed, language, understanding, mood, and movement. So, you know, dementia wasn't really around with my grandparents. There was a little bit of it, but I think what's happened is that people died before they got dementia, and now they don't die of anything else. They end up with dementia.
How old did people die in the 1800s?
Have you never watched King Lear by Shakespeare? So he was around in the Elizabethan times.
Yeah, some
I
people.
think
did
Dad's
get
bringing
dementia.
a bit too much intellect into this podcast. I've just stepped back.
I'm sort of thinking I might only get one chance to sit in this special chair,
Yeah,
so I've
you
got to make the
certainly
most
will.
of it.
Certainly, will. You're not going to be invited back if you have to be such a nincompoop.
Okay, I'll be really nice. But I think dementia has always been around. Everyone has always thought about old people as being forgetful, and
It was always around, but a lot of people died before they got dementia. So I guess it was your family that, well, when we first knew about dementia.
well, my grandfather had a stroke, and then he was a bit like your dad, and then but Papa, that's what we all called my dad, had Alzheimer's at 73, 75, and he died at 84. So he kind of had Alzheimer's for the best part of 10 years.
I didn't really know him without Alzheimer's.
That's a shame.
No, he was kind of quite. It was pretty awful because he was kind of like the head of the family. He would organise everything. He'd be the man that you'd give your passport to if you weren't responsible enough to kind of look after it yourself. You know.
Yeah.
And watching that slow decline of somebody, it is really hard. That's why I say just laugh at every aspect of Alzheimer's or just dementia that you can. And it might seem cruel at the time, but honestly, they're not going to remember. So it doesn't matter. And what's important about dementia is that the carers have to keep themselves fit and healthy. You know, my mum, she had to get away sometimes and, you know, go on holiday and do that sort of thing.
Yeah,
It's hard.
Do you remember the
Yeah.
decline in... So Papa, Graham's dad, you remember him only with dementia, do you?
Yeah. I can't.
Do you
What was his
remember my
favourite-
dad
What was his
before?
favourite topic of conversation?
The war, and he could
liked the war.
could do a really good.
That was
but what
Zuka bombers.
There wasn't Stuka bombers.
No, they're doodlebugs.
Doodlebugs.
Doodlebugs, yeah. And he used to recreate the noise for us. We used to find it very exciting.
that was really cool actually.
I think you were quite frightened of him.
I was quite
Yeah,
frightened.
I was. But that's
He would snap quite quickly.
Yeah, but it didn't stop you from trying to nick stuff off his plate to see who was going to get a smack on
No,
the
I
hand.
know,
though, did it?
but that was just that.
It was
was
again,
that?
but you were
Or
always.
did you just try and make Rafi do that? Rafi, go and nick Papa's raspberry. Do you know one of the saddest things is that before he lost his mind, I never really got the chance, looking at how you lot ran me ragged, I never really got the chance to say to my dad, I am so sorry for all the I put you through when I was a teenager.
How did the relationship change with your dad when the dementia progressed?
So what's weird is when you have a relationship that is very much child and father, and it was until late in my life, when I was around him, I still really respected his opinion. And, I would ask him advice, but it was when he started making decisions that weren't very rational. And you'd see it was very difficult for a couple of years because I didn't quite know how to do it, because I didn't want to belittle him. I didn't want to kind of acknowledge the fact that he wasn't quite the man that he once was. And that was very difficult for him as well. Basically just, I think the stage almost in sort of 4 years in, when he decided that he was no longer the person to book flights. He was no longer the person to order a taxi. He was no longer the person to kind of do his accounts. He was, everything was slowly taken away from him, which was his roles. He was still funny. He would still have a laugh. He could still sit at dinner and, we'd all have a great time and we'd have a laugh. But it was, but I mean, that obviously went in the end.
Eventually, he just kind of got so confused that he was quite cross, and then you become benign.
I think he was very frustrated. And what's sad is that he was frustrated. He was frustrated for your memorable childhood. Until he died. And then, a year before he died.
But you would be frustrated. If I couldn't remember loads of stuff, I'd be so... when you walk into a room and you can't remember why you're in there, imagine how annoying that would be all the time.
Yeah.
He'd drink wine like it was water. He wouldn't know the difference between the two of them. And so we did have, about a year and a half where Granny would get Ribena and put Ribena in his glass sometimes, because otherwise he was just there tearing through 2 bottles of wine. And it's not great the next day because he'd wake up and be even more confused.
It's sort of like he became the child in a way, and everybody knew he was the child. And you're sort of, in the same way as when you have a child, you look across a child's head and go, oh, just don't give them the chocolate, pretend you're going to, or give them, or you say things like...
Do you think he understood that? Do you think he got that a little bit?
I think by the time you're at the stage where you can't tell the difference between Ribena and wine, I kind of think you're probably not so worried about.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a feeling that they have. They don't quite know what's going on, but there's a feeling they have that something's going on. And when they don't understand what's going on.
That feeling when everyone's just been talking about you and then you walk into a room.
Yeah.
I think...
So they have that feeling,
Yeah.
and you can tell because they're scared and they don't trust anyone because they think something's happening and they're not sure what the thing is.
Honestly, the worst bit of it, I've just remembered, and it's just made me feel a little bit sick, actually. It was seeing a man who's always been in control and watching him being really insecure. And that was absolutely hideous. It really, really was. What Mum just said, it was that role reversal of me suddenly feeling paternally protective over my dad. And that is very, very, very difficult. The first time that you do that, it's a very kind of emotional thing to go through. I'm not a crier at all, really. I remember once getting in the car and just bursting into tears in front of Mum and just thinking, oh my God, she's going to leave me. I'm so wet.
Oh, you're so
and it was
ridiculous.
just, it was awful. It was just one of those things that I couldn't deal with the change that had happened, that role reversal. And it was just, it's fine. I had a little blub, like a baby. Sarah gave me a slap, and that was the end of it.
Told him to toughen up, or I'll divorce him.
Yeah.
And then he stopped, which is a jolly good thing too.
But actually, I think in a way it was probably quite a good thing, because it's a real roller coaster having a parent or a
you should
partner.
be totally allowed to cry. I cry all the time.
Yeah.
When did you last cry?
When I watched Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Took me 3 days to recover from that.
Yeah.
3 whole days.
Papa would have been so sad that he didn't get to see Guardians of the Galaxy 3 as well, I think.
The depressing thing about it is it's not going to get better. It's a decline that is going in one direction only, and it's not going to undo. It's just a question of how fast it happens. And for a while with your dad, it wasn't so bad. He was just, to begin with, you're just a little bit forgetful, and that's
it must be really horrible knowing that you're
knowing you're going must be terrifying.
Going and knowing you're forgetting, and then it would get really frustrating as well.
Do you know, I think if there was one really, really important thing that I'd say, having seen it for 10 years, is don't be annoyed about it when it's not that bad.
Yes, that's so true.
Because I think
it gets worse.
The problem is it changes the dynamic, especially of a marriage, I think. And you look at my mum, who had known my dad all her life, and she found his forgetfulness a bit annoying.
Yeah.
And actually, I think probably it would have just been better to have scooped that up in hindsight and just gone, he's got Alzheimer's, he's a bit forgetful, we're just going to live with that until, things get really bad. And then you look back.
With the benefit of hindsight, if it had been an easy thing to do you think, father lived too long?
I think he probably lived for 2 years too long. And I think that had he gone out there, I think that it was, when you get to that stage when you don't remember anything and all you're doing is you're creating memories for your grandchildren and your children. And, it was really, really hard on my mum. My mum, in the end, we put Papa into a home.
Yeah, I remember that.
6 months of his
a few
life.
months.
Yeah, but it was the last, I think, 4 or 5 months of his life. And, he should have definitely gone into a home 2 years before. But then, to be fair though, if he hadn't gone into a home, he went into the home. I remember going and visiting him. My mum going and visiting him in his home, and he had found himself a new girlfriend in his home. And the new girlfriend was incredibly suspicious of my mum. And she was screaming with laughter, and she said, God, I was quite put in my place by this Alzheimer old girl. He said, why are you here? What are you talking to him for? It's situations like that you just have to laugh at, because if you don't laugh at them, you're not ever going to be in a position to be able to care for somebody. You've got to be quite cutthroat about the fact that you laugh at every single situation that you can possibly laugh at, because if you don't, it's going to bring you down. And if you're bringing down as a primary carer, that's no good for anyone.
Was there something that if you went back now you would have changed about the whole situation, the whole dynamic?
I just would have had so many more conversations with him before he got really forgetful. A whole load of things. I was so ungrateful. I was so young, really. I'd have had emotional conversations with him in a way that I didn't.
Are you scared of getting dementia?
It is my biggest fear. I'm not so frightened of getting Alzheimer's at 80, but if it happens, I know some people that it's happened to 55 and they're suddenly staring down the barrel of early onset dementia, and probably lights out by the time they're 60.
So what is it about getting Alzheimer's that you're scared of?
I just think not being able to be in control of my own destiny. I mean, obviously we're a family and our destiny is pretty much guided
Do you not believe in
by
fate?
the important and dominant members of the family.
Mm-hmm.
I.e. the children.
Really? I was looking to my left.
Me? Am I in charge?
You're such a force of nature, I don't want you to get Alzheimer's. I almost would rather get it myself. Imagine.
So, Dad, as dementia's a big fear for you, is there anything that you've changed in your life or the way you parent?
The truth is, I don't think that I'm at the stage in my life yet where I'm going to start changing exactly how I behave so I don't get Alzheimer's, which I probably should. Now's the time.
I mean, you're healthy though. You run every day.
You are healthy.
You work out.
Yeah. I don't feel very healthy.
It's a strange thing because you're not at that age where it's acceptable to kind of post topless photos on your Instagram. So what are you working out for?
Well, I don't know. I maybe it is a nod to that. Maybe I am trying to be a little bit healthier. But then it means if you're a bit healthier generally, it means that you can do all the things that you enjoy doing in life, which is sitting around a table and drinking a bit too much at a Sunday lunch, you know.
It was so sad watching your father's decline and your relationship with him change. But I think not as much as the relationship that your mother had with your father and that decline. That was it was sort of impacted her.
But what about you? Because your mother was already dead when your father started declining.
So that was weird because my mother just went out like a light. So there was no decline. She was completely normal and then died.
Yeah.
Like that was that. Whereas my father, I was so close to him. I mean, so close to him, sort of weirdly
because he was your only parent from the age of 10 to when he died. Yeah,
I guess. And I'd ring him about everything. I'd spend hours on the phone talking to him. And then he had a stroke on my birthday. I remember it really well. It was a bleed on the brain and he sort of disappeared really then in a way. There was a little bit of him that came back, but it was, then he got really bad, so he didn't know who anyone was. And they insisted on keeping him in hospital where he didn't want to be. Couldn't understand where he was. And
after he'd had a stroke, I remember seeing you coming back. And we went to Pizza Express.
We did.
And you were absolutely broken. I just remember doing that. And I thought everyone in the restaurant must have thought I was being awful because you just kept bursting into tears throughout lunch the whole time. And I remember that. And actually, from that moment, it sort of got a bit better.
It did, because he'd sort of, in a funny kind of way, he sort of went then in a funny sort of way. There was a bit of him that came back a bit, but yeah, that was really...
Never 100%.
No, that was sort of...
He had a second stroke as well, didn't he?
I think he had lots of little ones maybe after. But it was really bad, and then he kind of got a little bit better, and then he went downhill again, and then dementia set in.
What was the funniest moment when your dad was really, when he really had dementia? I think was when it was Christmas, wasn't it? 3 years ago.
Oh, yes. That was yes.
Oh, crap, and you had cancer.
Yeah, so I didn't tell him I had cancer because
No.
I thought he'll get really confused between my mum who died of cancer and the fact that I've got cancer.
That's a kind of horrible thing to do, that you weren't able to confide in the person who you probably wanted to confide in most.
Yeah, but that man sort of did go a
No,
while
I know,
before.
but I'm just saying it's kind of weird because he's there.
He would have been my first person
he would have
to
been
talk
the first person. But he's still, it's not like he wasn't around. It's just
No,
he wasn't around.
inside.
You would have definitely
himself.
told your brother first.
Yeah, no, I would have told my brother first, but he just wasn't inside.
What about you? You would have been there.
you-
Oh,
first,
no,
obviously.
Schma. Who's that?
Whatever.
Graham, Schmaham.
Yeah, that husband
whatever.
I used to know.
Oh, it's not true. No,
fine.
obviously, Dad
Thanks,
comes first.
thanks. I love it. I'm number 3 on your list.
No, obviously you're number 1, you idiot.
One of which is her father who's got dementia. And you're just under that.
But he used to get really cross, my dad, when he thought if everyone started laughing.
He was paranoid, wasn't he?
He was so
Yeah.
paranoid, and he thought everyone was laughing at him. So if you were all sitting around the table and suddenly there was a burst of laughter, he'd think that was about him.
But it's interesting because you were saying to your dad as well that he kind of got insecure about it. He was but was your dad was he a bit paranoid before that?
Really
as well?
insensitive.
Was he ever
I just realised that was three years ago. What, I was too old to be as insensitive as I was. You hated it with every fibre in your being that he was kind of getting agitated by the whole thing. And I feel I didn't really notice it enough.
There wasn't a great deal
There was
that
nothing
you
you could have
could do about it. I mean, we could all sit around, at Christmas dinner, all being very glum and silent, or we could have had a laugh. And
But that was-
It was
But
okay
that was
if
a
you got
problem.
him one-on-one. You had to, the key with him is you had to get him one-on-one and talk, look in his face.
He did get
One-
paranoid though, because
he
I
got
do
very
remember,
paranoid.
like we would laugh around the table, and he would think that we were
laughing at him.
laughing at him.
And so
but that was a real problem for him. He didn't like.
he
Not
wanted
that anyone
and
does.
then he couldn't understand why he was there, and he couldn't remember anything. So
But then it would get worse, because the moment you get paranoid, then you go, I just want to go. I want to go back. So
yeah, and then he'd want to go home, but he couldn't remember where home was. He didn't know who. Anyway, he got more and more confused. So I took him out of the dining room. I thought, I'll go and sit him down in the sitting room so he can just he can be on his own. I can just talk to him one-on-one, and then he won't be so confused. So I took him in there and cheered him up quite a bit. I had a very hot wig on because I didn't want him to know I was bald. So when I cut my hair, when I first was diagnosed with cancer, and you guys cut my hair off. Anyway, then I went to go and went in to see him when my hair was really short. He was every now and then he knew kind of what was going on, because he looked at me and just went, "What's happened to your hair?" And I said, "Oh, I cut it off because I fancied a change." And he went, "Your poor husband, how awful."
It's true.
Anyway, then this was so brilliant. At Christmas, I took him into the other room because he was so cross with everyone. And I cheered him up a bit by talking to him about the things he liked talking about. And anyway, he then just went, "Oh, the thing is, you're not very attractive, but I suppose we'd better get married." So brilliant.
Oh, but thank God he says you're not very
Wow,
attractive.
you're not very attractive.
Because
it could have
because
been.
it could have been far worse.
Yeah, that could have been worse. I'm
far
actually just
worse.
thinking about it right now.
I said, there's many, many problems with this plan, Daddy. I said, firstly, you're married. Secondly, I'm also married. And thirdly, the word daddy means it's kind of illegal because you're my father and I'm your daughter. Anyway, he was very confused. He did have moments, because I'd always say, "Hello, Daddy, I'm your daughter, Sarah." And he'd go, most of the time, he'd say, "Well, don't be silly."
Weirdly, that's something that I remember having to do quite a lot to both grandparents. I remember.
Introduce yourself.
Yeah, every time you meet them, you introduce.
And every sort of 4 sentences you said again.
Well, no, I just remember it being something that you definitely always have to do. I remember you telling me remember to introduce yourself again to your grandfather.
I remember
Hello, Papa. I'm Billy. I'm your eldest grandchild, most handsome, and most important. I was normally saying.
You shouldn't be confusing him like that. He's already confused enough.
So one of the real problems with any sort of dementia is the ability to be very, very inappropriate
Yes.
in different places. I remember once when he came to one of your concerts, and he was very good at sitting. He was normally pretty good at sitting down at you lot, but sometimes if there was something that he didn't like, he'd literally just put his hands over his ears like that in front of everybody. And you'd be going, "Oh no, don't do that."
And then start
poor
singing.
little Michael is doing his best on the violin. I mean, it is awful, but you just
Actually,
sit on your hands and try and listen to it. And he'd be there going, "No, I'm not having any of this. It's awful." And it'd be noisy in his complaint as well.
Well, do you know the thing that I discovered with both my dad and your dad is that actually people are really forgiving of it. So if you take them, I used to take my dad to the garden centre, and because it was a little trip out, and it wasn't very far away, but people are so lovely if you just sort of look at them and go, "It's a bit forgetful." I used to often say it's a bit forgetful. And then everyone will get it. And everyone's so nice. Actually, I think one of the problems with dementia is that you feel that they can't go anywhere. But actually, other people, everyone knows about dementia. People are really kind and really nice. And they don't mind if they say slightly weird things. And it just makes them laugh.
Yeah.
I do sometimes wonder whether actually it wasn't necessarily either my dad's or your dad's inappropriate behaviour. It was you and I taking them to really inappropriate things that they shouldn't really have done.
Actually.
You had to take him in the latter days of my dad's illness, not the latter days, but you always had to take him to a quiet restaurant. If he was in a clangy restaurant, he'd turn around and go, "Come, why are you making so much noise?" Just people behind just cutting up with something normally. You go, "Oh, crap, I'm so sorry."
Slicing through a boiled potato.
Yeah.
But you spoke to your dad all the time, and you were so close, and then suddenly he was gone, right?
Yeah, pretty much suddenly, actually. So, do you know, it's weird because so he was so close to me and I used to ask him advice on everything and I told him about everything. We had an amazingly open relationship. You could talk to him about anything, my dad, anything at all. But when he had his stroke, he sort of died in a way that day because that was the last time I ever phoned him. I never phoned him again after that. I tried to get him phones with big buttons and talk to him, but he was very confused by it. And he was never really there ever again.
I really, really do remember it being a very different relationship from the moment that he had his stroke. And he did get better and then he got worse again. But it was
kind of, I suddenly turned into his mum. That's what it was. It's weird because I've had both versions with my parents. I've had both versions. I've had the totally normal lights out one day, end of story. And then I've had the sort of slow decline and the lights out. The fact is that my mother, she's sort of deified in a way because she never went into a decline and she died young and beautiful and all with it.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because there is something about that like, even though I don't know Granny Anne, I am picturing her as being, 30 forever, eternally 30.
Yeah.
But then if you get,
And the sadness about my dad is that
you'll
always remember him when he had dementia because that's the bit that you remember most. Whereas the bit before, which is the best bit of him, that's sort of, I just kind of like to rub out the last few years because the bit before was so amazing.
So do you guys have any advice for someone that has a family member with Alzheimer's, bearing in mind you two have been through it?
Do you know what I'd say is try and make sure that in terms of location, you live as close as possible to the people who are likely to come and see you right the way through. I think if you can be close enough for them to be able to nip in for 3 minutes twice a day, that works better because people with dementia get really tired. So if you've got to travel 4 hours to see them, they'll still only have 3 minutes. Yeah. And then you've got to travel 4 hours back and so you won't see them very often.
I think the only advice that I could really, really give would be try and make the most of every stage. And try and make the most of every stage without looking at where it's going. Because, it is only one way and it just goes downhill into death. So that's why you have to be so upbeat. You have to be so, you have to laugh at what you can do. I don't mean laugh nastily at someone and make them insecure, but just go to the next door room and laugh about stuff, no matter how inappropriate it is. Because frankly, if your parents have got dementia, they're going to be really inappropriate sooner or later anyway. And that's just what happens. And if you can't laugh at it, you're just going to be worried and cut up about it. And if as a carer, you're not making the most of those moments. But also, I think I would say that as you can get an awful lot out of people in the right situation. If you're not taking them to a restaurant where you're worried about how they're behaving, if you go round and have lunch with your Alzheimer's old mum or dad, or your grandchildren or your children go, they will get an awful lot out of some of those conversations if everybody's relaxed and in a kind of like a safe environment.
Yeah, I do feel I've got quite a lot out of both of them, even though my living memory is only really with them with dementia. So I think just really try and get to the bottom of it because it will be memories.
It doesn't mean you
forever.
can't speak to them or have conversations with them.
Yeah, they're just different conversations. It's a really good lesson for life, I think, what you said. And that is that you should be living for today, not yesterday, not tomorrow, because today is what matters.
Kind of goes without saying that family will generally give you the most support. But I would, if anyone is a friend of someone with dementia, I would just say, please do carry on seeing them, get them out, because the carers, which is generally somebody's spouse or their partner, they need a break. And it doesn't matter if it's, 4 of you, it's just not having to have the same conversations day in, day out and take responsibility the whole time and just forgetting about stuff that you do. And if you give a carer the opportunity to forget about that, it's a really, really, really generous thing to do. And don't be embarrassed by people with dementia, although it can be excruciatingly embarrassing sometimes. You just have to accept it for what it is and try not to get cross, I suppose.
So after the break, we're going to be talking a little bit about Dementia Talk, which is a part of TikTok where you can speak about dementia.
So do you know what Dementia Talk is?
No, what's Dementia Talk?
Okay, so there's different corners of social media, especially TikTok. So you have like Book Talk, which is when people talk about books, and then it has talk on the end because it's like on TikTok.
Oh, clever.
And then you've got Dementia Talk.
So
It's like all
Dementia
those
Talk
different-
is a corner of TikTok where people post stuff about dementia.
Yeah, and it's really supportive in the comments always. So people kind of share their own experiences with dementia.
Probably would, if you were trying to find something out about it.
but if
it'd
you
Be
help.
supportive if you were going through it.
The comments section is really supportive.
Yeah.
I've seen it. It is really supportive.
Also, like, you know how you were saying that, like, for Granny and for Granny Jane, it was, it's quite isolating.
Yes, I think
So
it is.
if you are feeling a bit alone, if you're feeling a bit isolated, then you can go on to.
Yeah, quite a good
You
place
have to
go.
scroll through the that TikTok does provide, like some of the really low quality videos. But then there is stuff like Dementia Talk, and it might help you, might make you feel.
I wouldn't have thought that's
More
what you really
included.
want to be doing.
Well, I don't know, but
if you've got a break, then to go on to Dementia Talk and look at a whole load of other people.
what we're saying is it can be relatable because it's your experience of it. It's not just like, oh, dementia's something
You
that
can find really honest.
dementia's something that people get, and it's something that would be really horrible to go through. Whereas people are sharing their experiences of what it's like to live with someone with
Yeah.
dementia, to have a mum with dementia, to have a grandmother with dementia, to have.
If you're living with someone with dementia, you know what it's like.
Well,
Of course you do,
check
but
up on
sometimes you
Support, though,
feel
I think
alone.
it's-
Support.
They
But if you're
feel
feeling
like-
alone, like you're the only person going through this and no one understands, then sometimes it could be quite nice to know that you're not the only person. You're not the
Yeah.
only. There is something much more relevant about TikTok though, because if you have a family, obviously I know what it's like because I've had both my grandparents have had it. But if you have a family member who's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, you don't know much about it. You can read an article, but you can read an article wherever, and you can be like, okay, well, this
It's probably filtered and made.
This is kind of, well, even if it's by the, it might be factually correct, but it doesn't really give you an idea about what it's going to be like or what you need to expect or what it, or anything like that. Whereas something like on TikTok would be because you've got a video of someone with dementia. You've got people monitoring it over the years, so you kind of know what to expect, even though that's probably would be a bit, maybe not something that you wanted to do.
And you've got the comments, so you've got people seeing what someone's gone through,
And then
comments
sharing their
advice.
experience as well. So it could be a bit more relevant as opposed to just going, these are the symptoms of what is going to happen to you.
It's probably a
roughly.
more accurate depiction of
Yeah.
reality.
People
But
because people actually have a voice, and you don't have people higher up deciding whether it gets posted or not, because there is a bit of a stigma around not really wanting to talk about dementia, because obviously it is a bit of a difficult topic, and we've already agreed that it's a difficult topic. But I feel that social media can be used in a good way with those kind of things.
I think I agree. I think to make people feel less isolated,
Mm.
whether it's the person who has got dementia or their carer, to make them feel less isolated and communicate with other people has got to be a good thing, hasn't it? Got to be.
Yeah, got
And
to
we
be a
all
good
know that your mental health is better whether you've got dementia or not if you speak to people, if you go
Yeah.
out and do things. So we had a tea dance here, which was actually brilliant because I'm an ambassador for the King's Foundation, and they have tea dances. And some of the King's butlers came down and trained the boys how to serve tea correctly. So they do tea dances in Dumfries, where local people from Age UK and vulnerable elderly people,
So just-
isolated people
so
come
just-
and have a tea dance.
Yeah.
They have a cup of tea, they get served by the butlers, then they have a dance, and then the butlers will dance with them. And
It was cool though, wasn't it? Because it just, you guys were really, really good, I have to admit. But you got a lot out of it. You know, there were some very, very interesting people.
I got a
Calm
few
down.
compliments about being good looking, which
Yeah.
I was very pleased by. Rafi took it a bit too far and then sort of tried to charm them all back a bit too much, maybe.
But you know, old people are just young people who have
Got older
lived
bones.
longer.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
it's
true.
just they're all fun.
But if you, I mean, that's the one thing I do think is with dementia, and they know because now I'm a patron of Age UK, and they know that if you're isolated, you are more vulnerable. So
Yeah.
you're going to get forgetful when you get older anyway, but on your own is not the best place to be. Socializing and seeing other people is the best way to be cognitively well as long as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So in the same way as the tea dance brings people together, Dementia Talk brings people together within TikTok so that people can chat to other people in the same position as them.
And it's really easily accessible, which is probably a good thing as well. So
Yeah, really easy to find day and night, whatever time of day you're feeling a bit kind of overwhelmed or on your own. It's a good place to go, actually. I think have a tea dance, do some dancing, or Dementia Talk is a good place to go.
So apparently Alzheimer's and dementia is the leading cause of death in the UK. So why do you reckon we all struggle to speak about it?
Probably because we're all a bit scared
I think
of the diagnosis.
I think it's really frightening, dementia, because by the time it gets to a point where you wouldn't want, you lose control of being able to make decisions for yourself. And therefore, if you want to make a decision, you have to make it before you know that at some point you won't be able to make decisions for yourself. And that's really scary to think you'll be completely out of any kind of control. So how do you find Dementia Talk?
You literally just search dementia on TikTok.
Oh, and that takes you to...
It's in
where
the
it
search
is.
bar.
As with everything on TikTok, you need to double check your sources because it could be completely made up, but there you can really get some really honest opinions and takes on that someone else's experiences with that kind of situation.
Thank you. After the break, we're going to be taking a listener's question. This is the part of the show where we take a listener's question, and this is a question from Charlotte. Hi, Sarah. I've just listened to your podcast and love listening to you and your boys. Thank you very much, Charlotte. You've touched on parenting your parents whilst pretending to be the child. I'd love to hear more about this. I still have both my parents, but I'm starting to notice that at some point I'm going to have conversations that won't be easy. It'd be great to listen to you discussing the subject and giving me some ideas to maybe take forward. Keep calm and carry on talking. That's a nice letter.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much, Charlotte, for that nice letter.
So this is about parenting your parents. And one of the things I noticed with my father is that as he got dementia, there was a moment, and it wasn't a sudden moment, but there was a moment where slowly I didn't feel that he was in charge and that he could fix everything. There's that feeling when you're young that your parents can fix everything. They're going to be able to sort it all out. And then there was a moment where I realized that he couldn't and that actually I needed to sort it out for me and him. It's sort of harder than having children because if you're children and I know that I'm responsible for you, but with my dad, I had to pretend he was responsible for me whilst being responsible for him, which is kind of weird.
It's funny, it's a bit of an anathema to me because I don't feel responsible for my mum at all. You know, I really like seeing her and I like seeing her.
But maybe
it's not something that it hasn't changed yet. So she's still my mum. And weirdly, when I'm with her, it's not, sometimes I'll take her out to lunch. It's not, but it never feels an issue. She's still very much my mum, in a great way that we talk a bit. I have a great relationship with my mum. It hasn't changed
She's
yet.
very with it.
But I mean, you don't have to help your mum manage her money or manage what she does. She's completely independent.
Yeah, she is. I'm very lucky. But it's funny though. I mean,
More
it's
independent than
not
you.
something that I've really. Yeah, thanks very much.
I'm joking, obviously.
Would you ever feel that you've had to parent us?
Yeah, when you had vertigo.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I had to. So basically, we had gone to London for a songwriting session, me, Dad, and Billy, because
We're in a band.
We're in a band. And anyway,
Light work.
we had done that, and then we were meant to go back the next day, and he had suddenly just become really dizzy, and we had stayed the night, and then I came up to check on him, and the next day, and he was in a really bad way, like such a bad way, and we all thought he had had a stroke. Well, I was the only person there. I thought he'd had a stroke. He thought he'd had a stroke. He was going, "Call an ambulance! Call an ambulance!" I was going,
So pathetic.
and I managed to
really,
just
really chill about the
You
fact
were
that I was
not.
having a stroke. I said, I think maybe you should call an ambulance now. I was pretty terrified.
Don't
I'm
worry,
gonna tell you.
Mum called me up and went, get there now. Charlie just had to call an ambulance. Get there now. Making me panic way more. Got there, Charlie was like, hey mate, you're right.
weirdly, I think I was too caught up in trying to work out what was going on to have a panic, which is always quite
Right,
good.
because I was panicking for both of us.
That's
Yeah,
different,
you
though,
were.
But
I was more concerned about fixing what was happening than having a panic.
I would have had a panic first.
Yeah, I know
'cause
you
that
would have had a
been more
panic
important.
first.
But what I thought was a much
You'd have
better.
made it a bit more about you.
Yeah. Charlie, can you just take a photo of me for my Instagram? I obviously wouldn't.
Me
Do you know that
nursing
is-
my dad.
Yeah. Just got one.
Had a terrible day today.
Yeah, had a
Do you know,
terrible
that is
day.
not too
Can you turn the flash
Hashtag,
off?
hashtag selflessness.
Hashtag Mother Teresa.
I'm going to say something in front of everyone. I cannot tell you how grateful I was to you then, because I would like to let everybody know that not only did you feel like parents, I also felt like a child. I was so
I put your clothes on for you.
Did you?
Yeah. The ambulance was there, and I went, "Let me put your socks on now," and you went. All I do want to say though quickly is that there were moments where when you were really sick with cancer, you two just stayed like unbelievably strong and didn't give me or Billy or Rafi or Laurie an opportunity to behave like parents in any way, which I'm super grateful for. But I feel like maybe
I was at home more than
you were at home more. I imagine you probably you would have definitely been more
I
involved.
think the whole family would have fallen apart without Billy.
Always. Do you know, weirdly, I remember when my dad phoned me when his mum died. So his dad died first, his mum died first, sorry, and then his dad. When his dad died, he phoned me and he said, "Oh, my dad died this morning." And he sounded like just a little lost boy. And obviously he was an adult because it was, I don't know, only about 15 years ago or something like that. Or maybe 20 years ago, actually. But anyway, he was an adult and he just sounded so lost because he'd already lost one parent and then the other parent had died. And I said, "Oh, don't worry, I'll look after you now." And he sounded a little relieved. And I think there's that, the concept of being orphaned, even though he was probably 60, was terrifying.
Hang on though, didn't you famously say when your mum died and you were what, 10?
Yeah.
And you said, "Don't worry everyone, I'll do the washing from now on."
Yeah, that seemed like a good way of fixing things.
But I think you sort of took responsibility from probably even earlier than your mum dying. But you've always been really, really responsible. It's
Well, the
why you can
irony
put up with
is-
the 4 or 5 men that you live with.
So today's episode has been about dementia, and there are a number of charities in the UK that offer support for people whose lives are affected by dementia. The Alzheimer's Society provides support services, information and advocacy for individuals affected by dementia and their families. Dementia UK offers specialist dementia support through their Admiral nurses who provide expert guidance and practical solutions to families facing dementia. And the Alzheimer's Research UK focuses on funding scientific studies to find treatments, cures, or preventative measures for all forms of dementia, including Alzheimer's disease. You can find the websites for those charities in the show notes. So that was Dad's first podcast. How do you think he did? Oh,
Very well.
Thanks very
you get
much.
a little clap. Well done.
So most importantly, how do you think I did?
Well, we'll see.
Well,
I don't think
it's been very nice to be here on this one very special occasion.
It's
Then
nice to have a guest.
Are you not coming back next week?
No.
No.
Oh, sorry, yes.
why
I'm joking. No, it's been really good. No, you've been really brilliant.
Bit of a mouthful though. Seriously, with Billy and Charlie and Graham Swift.
No. Have you not seen Seriously with Sarah Beanie? That's what it's called. Anyway, thank you, Graham and Billy and Charlie. And thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
When you love someone living with dementia, you're living with it too. Dementia does not just impact the person with the diagnosis, everybody around them is also affected. Research carried out by Dementia UK found that 9 in 10 carers feel that the transition from family member to full-time carer has impacted on their own mental health. But it's important to know that you are not alone. Dementia specialist Admiral nurses, like me, are here to help. If you need advice or support on any aspect of dementia, you can contact Dementia UK's free Admiral Nurse helpline on 0800 888 6678. We're open 7 days a week and we're here to help. We've also launched a free Living with Dementia guide. This is packed with expert advice from our specialist Admiral nurses on everything, from getting a diagnosis to coping with changes in behaviour and planning for the future. To receive a free copy, visit Dementia UK's website at dementiauk.org/together. Thank you.
If you'd like to submit a topic for us to discuss, please email us. The address is mail@seriouslywithsarahbeanie.co.uk. Seriously was created by me, your host, Sarah Beanie, and our producer, Jonathan Profaska. The show is recorded and edited by Jonathan Profaska and Christian Kay.